Okay guys, this is an old truck that we put together probably 10, 12 years ago. I think me, Justin, Travis, and Danny Coggins, we put this thing together back before we had this shop for a friend of ours. It actually had a 331 Hemi in it that was kind of a cool motor, but unfortunately the block is cracked in it. The truck's been sold since then. A friend of mine named Brady has bought the truck, and he wanted to do something different with it. And you know, the 331s, it's just not like they're everywhere, the Hemis. So I was like, hey, maybe you should just put a big block Chevy in it. That way we can get all the parts for it. You can drive it around, have fun with it. And so that's what we did. So it's got a big block Chevy in it. Right now, what we're doing today is we've got it to the point to where we're gonna break in the camshaft on this thing today and fire it up and run it for a little while. It's gonna be probably a 20-minute break-in on this thing to try to get the camshaft to seat up and make sure we don't flatten the camshaft on it. It's been a little bit of a process to get to this point. Greg, my guy here in the shop, built a 6 set of headers for this thing. As you can see right here, all stainless steel from Wolf Industries. They sent us out all the stainless steel. And Greg's got, I don't know, 25 years of exhaust experience. So obviously the headers turned out bitchin'. They're done right, they're gonna sound good. But right now we're just gonna try to get ready to fire this thing up so we can run it, break in the motor. We still have to come back to it. We're gonna have to put we gotta build a rear end for this thing. The challenging part was to find a rear end wide enough to put in here so we could put these fat tires on it. These are just mocked up right now, but we found something from an early 80s, late 70s Ford truck. We're gonna use a 9-inch. I've got a center section. I need to order axles for it, but disc brake it, put it all back on so we have a good rear end in this thing. The one that's in it now probably won't like this big block because this thing is just to break in with the carburetor on it. But I've got a 671 blower over here. We're gonna put 2 carburetors on that and really put some boost to this motor. So this is just for the break-in process right now. I hate to break these big blocks in with just with the blower and everything on. I've done it before and flattened the camshaft on them. It's better to just fire them up with a carburetor on something that you know works and get through that process. It's always the scary part. But let's go in here and I'll show you the motor that was in it. Okay, so this is the 331 Hemi that was in the little truck. It's a cool little motor. They made this little motor from 1951 to 1955. It's like a 5.4 liter Hemi. They were pretty cool. They're kind of the nostalgic Hemi hot rod motor for a lot of the old cars from, say, like the 30s and 40s. They would put these in there. This was the Hemi days, you know, with the big valve covers and the big heads on it with the spark plugs coming through the valve covers. There's just really nothing cooler, honestly, than a Hemi. Like, they're really, really cool. I mean, the big block Chevy in there will probably run better and be more dependable, and probably make more horsepower. These made a little bit of horsepower, but not a ton. Like that big block in there will probably make twice the horsepower this thing really does. But it is a neat little motor, and if you can see down here, the reason why we pulled it out is because underneath here, it's like somebody tried to Bondo this whole block right here. And what happened is it just started cracking and leaking more. So I don't know. I may grind all this out and try to re-weld the block back together. There's actually some antifreeze coming out of it right now. And that's a possibility. I mean, it can be fixed. It's just gonna take some time and effort to get it fixed right. But for now, it's just almost easier to just throw a big block Chevy at it and the thing's dependable. This guy just wants to go drive it and have fun. He doesn't want to work on stuff, and I don't blame him. So the big block Chevy's the easiest way. This one here, like I said, is 1951 to about 1955. And in 1956 is when they came out with the 354, which was again another step up from this one. And they had a little bit different bell housing on them. This bell housing is all cast iron right here. Back here on the back of this motor, you can see how it was all part of the block. Well, in 1954, they got rid of all that, and then you could use just a regular bell housing off like a 727 transmission or whatever they had, a truck transmission. This one here was a little bit different. We had to get an adapter to adapt the transmission to it, but this actually is a pretty nice little sounding motor, but I mean, if it's cracked, it's not really worth it. So let's go over and look at the one that's in the Quit Your Bitchin', and I'll show you the motor in that one. Okay, so Quit Your Bitchin' has the 1954, so this is 1956, and really they only made this 1 year, because by 57 they went to the 392, and they ran the 392 until they put the 426 Hemi and things. But I just really like the Hemi motor itself. It's just really cool looking. This is really when they built horsepower, and it was cool horsepower, you know, back in the 60s and 50s. This one has a 671 blower on it. It's got two 650 Hollies on it. This one here, actually on the bell housing back here, like I said, these blocks are a little bit different, so I adapted a turbo 400 transmission to this one. This one here has the cast iron heads on it. The other one has the aluminum hot heads on it, which is really cool. But what a cool little motor. They sound really good. There's something distinguished about a Hemi, the way they run. They just sound so good through the exhaust. And a lot of those old cackle cars from the old guys that you go up to the car show and they got a Hemi and they're running on nitro, they sound really bitchin'. But cool little motor, very dependable. They're hard working motors. They put them in a lot of different things. This one here was probably in a Chrysler Imperial or something, you know, but it's a neat little motor, and we've had a ton of fun with it. Okay, so this one here in the cancer car is actually a 392. It's a 1957. This one here, when we decided to do this one, I had this little 471 blower that I wanted to put on it with an old school Krager front assembly on it, which is kind of rare and probably very expensive to have this front assembly right here. It's got two Weber carburetors on it. But the thing about the 392 is it actually was a little bit more stroke and a little bit more bore than the 354. And this was the replacement for the 354. It was kind of fast in these years because they made the 354, I think, only maybe 1.5 years. And then it went to the 1957 and 1958 392. So they didn't really make a ton of them. They're out there, but not like a small block Chevy or not like a big block Chevy. That's why if you have a Hemi, it's really cool. And the 392s are, they're, I don't know, 325 horsepower maybe. With a blower on them, they might make, you know, 375 horse. But that's on a stock application. Like if you want to put some work into this thing, I mean, these guys were, you know, making 800 horsepower out of one of these 392s. So there is a room to grow on these things for sure. But it's kind of like, you know, the 331 up till 1955. Then in 1956 was the 354. And then by 1957 and 8 was the 392s. And, you know, every year they stroked them and bored them a little bit until they got up to this. And then it came out with basically the 426. They call it the elephant motor, which was a big cubic inch, underrated horsepowered car that literally dominated the market for a long time. I don't remember exactly what they rated the horsepower on the 426 Hemi, but it was underrated because of the power to weight ratio. They didn't want to like say it had more horsepower because then it would cause problems and they couldn't put it out there. But a lot of those cars were like that back in the day. The 396 in the 67 Chevelles were underrated horsepower. They made more horsepower than they really said they did because of the power to weight ratio. So that was the good old days. That was the fun, cool stuff. 4-speed cars, raw horsepower. You built up every day to try to make it go a little bit better and faster so you can go race somebody on the weekend. These are the cool days right here, and it's about over. So I'm having fun with it.